Hello, welcome to Matrix Live. The date today is the 21st of March, 2019. If you're keeping count, then this is Season 3, Episode 18 of Matrix Live. I'm Ben Park. You may have seen me in the rooms, and I'm here today with Kitsune. Kitsune works on lots of projects that you might have seen, really prominently libQMatrixClient and the ecosystem there. As well as Quaternion and the related projects. So why don't you say hello?
Okay, in Matrix, people who've seen me are usually seeing me around Qt-related projects, which are in particular Quaternion, libQMatrixClient, Spectral, Tensor, uMatrix, all that stuff. It all actually started back in 2015 with a completely different person named Felix Rohrbach, who is now unfortunately not involved in Matrix. Started the works on the Qt-based client called Quaternion. And after just the first few dozens of commits and half a year of development of this client, it so happened that the man called Alan Quayle of TED Hack and TED Summit fame has made a rolling announcement that TED Hack is coming to Tokyo. And it so happened that I've seen that announcement and joined TED Hack in the beginning of 2016. And that's how I got introduced to Matrix. Before that, of course, I opened the list of Matrix projects. We didn't have Try Matrix Now page in the form it looks like now. It was pretty much bare bone back then. But I found out that there is a Qt-based client. By then, my day job has considerably shifted to managerial work. So at some point in time, I got freaked out that I'm losing the grip on coding. So I really thought that I have to get back to my IDE and see what am I worth for still. Turned out things are not very grim, and I could restore my skills pretty quickly. And at the same time, I got very much entangled into the Quaternion development. Felix did one very right thing. He separated the backend code into a library, which was still in the same repository as Quaternion itself. But upon some convincing, it didn't take long before I convinced him to separate it into a separate repository so that we could promote it as the baseline for other clients. And shortly after that, another author who was developing a client called Tensor looked at that and has made a move to libQMatrixClient. So this was the first successful experience of promoting the common backend library. Later down the road, more Matrix clients merged using libQMatrix for Ubuntu Touch. And then later on, there was an attempt to bring Matrix to Sailfish OS with a client called Harbor Matrix. Unfortunately, it's right now in sort of hiatus as far as I could tell. And the most recent addition is, of course, Spectral.
Spectral, people may have previously known it as Matrix or Matrix. Right.
Yes. Turned out the name doesn't really sound well in French. Basically in 2000, it was 2016 when Alex started gradually moving away from things, getting more focused on his real life. And since 2017, I'm the project leader for the QMatrixClient project, and I'm trying to foster the ecosystem around it.
So the main projects that are using it today are Quaternion and Spectral. Is there anything else that uses libQMatrix that's currently in development?
uMatrix is alive. Cool. It's not evolving too quickly, but I've seen recently an announcement that Marius Gribsgaard, the man behind Ubuntu UBports initiative, is planning to do some additional work on it.
Yeah.
So it's I'd say it hasn't died, which is actually yeah, it's I'm very glad to know that.
Yeah, I mean, Ubuntu Touch is an interesting ecosystem because it's relatively small and in terms of the user base, and so small changes.
Very energetic.
Yeah, right. So small changes within the ecosystem can be really dramatic. So just a brief hiatus there, and then new competition coming in can really change.
That's right. The single thing that I'm really looking forward now is them moving on to the newer version of Qt.
Yeah.
Because the Qt version they are currently sitting on is literally getting out of support as we speak.
Oh wow. Okay. So let's come back to Qt, because what I know is you've mentioned a few times in the past that you're a big GNOME fan. You're a GNOME day-to-day.
Well, the bigger picture is that I'm an open source since 2000, I guess, one or something even earlier maybe. And back in those times, sitting in Russia and working for a small outsourcing company that was actually providing products based on Linux, I tried KDE, but shortly after I moved on to GNOME 2 because it looked to me much more usable.
Okay.
People cared more about usability, and at some point in KDE started well to look really frightening. So I moved on to GNOME 2, and at some point in time in 2006, I ended up being a single maintainer of packages for my favorite Linux distribution back then, called Alt Linux. Okay. People in Russia most likely know about it very well. It made some headlines in 2000s when they participated in bringing Linux to Russian schools. Yeah. And then when things moved on to GNOME 3, well, it was kind of controversial, but I still bought into the idea. I bought into a concept. And then it so happened that I literally fell out of open source community when my laptop died when I've been on a long-term business trip. Okay. So I had my personal laptop with all the keys and everything, and I didn't do backups. People, please do backups by all possible means. That's important. You can't overestimate the importance of this. Yeah, I got back to the backups that were back in Russia, but that was literally a few months later, and by then I was very much involved in different things. So since then, I wasn't a regular user of GNOME anymore, unfortunately. Okay. And then when I got back to open source community, it was a whole another world, very much networked, cloudified, because it was basically 5 years later. And there was Matrix, and I'm literally sitting now behind my Windows laptop, but developing open source software using open source toolchain, which is now available for Windows, fortunately. And I think it's actually a good thing in the end, in the same way as the good thing was bringing Firefox to Windows and ensuring that its support on Windows is first class. Well, basically, by the moment when I started using Matrix, I understood that we have to be pragmatic, and second thing, that if we want to get wide adoption of, in particular, open source products, whatever they are, we have to talk to people of different confessions. So we have to slowly drag them into our community, which means that we have to make our stuff accessible on their platforms, which, in my understanding, is the huge value of Matrix, because bridging is exactly this. Matrix makes open source, decentralized things accessible. GNOME was still using C. I consider myself a pretty solid C programmer as well. but I love C++ much, much more.
Mm.
And Qt really bored me entirely with its ease, with its learning curve. The learning curve was like almost nothing at all. If you have a bit of experience with C++, get on board with a simpler Qt project, which Quaternion was back then, was really a simple thing. Time to make a confession, I hate JavaScript. So there's no way you're going to buy me into development on Riot unless you do a write on C++ or Rust. If you turn Riot to Rust, then we can talk.
Well, how about Fractal then? Because that's GNOME, Rust on.
Right.
Must be your favorite thing.
When Fractal arrived, I thought, well, yeah, here it comes. There's a GNOME-Matrix-Client written in Rust. Perfect opportunity to do things a new way, to learn a new language. Except I was so much consumed by Quaternion by then that I literally could not afford a project in my life, on one hand, and I certainly did not consider dropping this one. There was a very strong sense of competition within Hacko at that point in time, and I understood that if I switch tracks, I will not catch up with them by any possible means. It was something that pulled me really strongly.
Okay.
So I stayed with Quaternion. I really don't regret about it. I think that Fractal folks are doing awesome things, and I really look forward to seeing a really solid experience about Matrix on GNOME. Eventually, when I get back to Linux platform as my primary, I will get back to GNOME and I will start using Fractal and I will like it. I'm pretty sure that I will keep on development on Quaternion, and that's just fine.
Yeah, it's great. It's great for the ecosystem. And I would say as well that Fractal are quite a long way away in terms of daily driver compared to Quaternion. The main thing being, the main thing for me being no local storage yet, which means that an initial sync on load is super expensive, and for an account with hundreds of rooms.
Right. Yeah, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Yes, this is terrible. But on the other hand, just switching on lazy loading actually makes things a no problem.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things in Quaternion's roadmap is the so-called no traces mode, when Quaternion really does not store anything to disk. But thanks to lazy loading, I can afford doing it with decent user experience still.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So you put a lot of faith in lazy loading as a good addition then.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, I'd say that I don't consider a switch anymore. It's not necessary.
All right. Great. Yeah. I mean, it seems to speed everything up a lot. I had
without downsides.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't realized before it came into view that the room membership was such a bottleneck in the sync process. So yeah, to have that solved.
Right. So last year was literally a breakthrough in this regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so people reported like 5 to 6x improvements in speed or experience of speed on Riot, which is...
Well, I had to go through numerous hoops to simply make something, make my account load in a few seconds instead of up to half a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Because by now it's relatively hefty, like 200 rooms or about that. Well, I used local storage to cache things and all that stuff, and I somehow managed to get to decent load times. But then I switched on lazy loading, and I understood that I don't need anything else.
And this is something, of course, that's supported in libQMatrix, the library, not just in Quaternion, right? So this is something that can be used by everything.
Yes, yes. I even go as far as recommending on the level of libQMatrixClient, you still can switch a no lazy loading mode. Actually, as of right now, as far as I remember, it's not even by default. You flip the switch to another API call explicitly. Okay. But I really consider that probably I will make it a default in the next version in 0.6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because so far it's so much no frills experience that I just don't believe why people would mode outside of corner cases. And for corner cases, there's that API call that you can disable lazy loading and use it without.
Yeah, it makes the most sense by far to have it turned on. It was just these things sometimes take a long time to test,
Yep.
long time to convince people that it's the right thing to do. And you need to be able to support it in the UI and so on. So it just needed longer testing.
Yeah, true.
So on that subject then, and the idea of ensuring that features are available at the library level, as a developer and a project admin, what's the difference between making a project for end users like Quaternion is, and making a project that's for developers like libQMatrixClient is? Because your users are different people.
Yes, and in fact, writing for developers is much more complex. The thing is, the software development industry in general is very much geared towards making the end user product. There are a lot of things that are done for developers, of course. But the culture of development, and this especially pertains to open source ecosystems, is that the fun stuff is developing new features. Testing and documenting those new features is a byproduct. And in open source, often considered a tedious and supplementary task.
Yeah.
You cannot consider it a supplementary task when you are developing a library, because the situation where I ended up at the moment is in fact not so promising, because the library itself has already a relatively large API surface. It's complex because client-server API is complex. And there's an idea already, and there was a request from the community to enable application services in libQMatrixClient. And that's something that will extend the surface even further. It will introduce callbacks because server will come to the library this time, something that hasn't been there even.
Interesting.
And the thing is, when the newcomer tries to grasp what we have, what I tell them is that, well, look, you have that user class, you have that connection class, you have that room class. Basically, these three pillars are almost everything you need. Yes, they're relatively huge, so there are many calls, but these three classes, just go through them and understand what they do. And then the next thing is the workflow. Okay, yeah, there are all those calls. The newcomer understands what each of these calls means, but now he has to proceed to writing a program out of them, to constructing the actual flow. And that's where things start getting tricky, because normally I have to give him an example. Like just target him to an example directory in libQMatrixClient. The examples directory at the moment actually co-sits as the testing suite. So it's a bit more than just an example.
Okay. Well, that's a great design though, because I mean that reduces the workload there by nearly half, and it proves the examples.
Yes, until you realize that within that testing suite, you literally have no particular place that is simple enough to say, well, look, this isolated piece is basically what you can start with for your new client. Because even that isolated piece consists of a few dozen calls, and half of them is not documented. And the guy may take this code, or it can take Quaternion code, somewhat reverse engineer it, and start using it.
Yeah.
But trying to get out of the well-trodden path is basically a recipe for failure. And that's how the current clients are even existing, because Spectral has been made on somehow out of ashes of Tensor and partially reused a lot of code from Quaternion.
Okay, so with the intention of just replacing
it is a port of Tensor to Ubuntu Touch. Well, we'll see how it goes. Eventually, probably we will move most of that reused code to the library, down to the library. That was the plan, but this plan is still yet to come to fruition. But uMatrix is a port of Tensor to Ubuntu.
Yeah.
Harbor Matrix is again a port of Tensor to Sailfish.
Yeah.
There's literally no client that has been made from scratch using libQMatrixClient, because it's next to impossible with the current state of documentation.
Okay.
And so this is the problem with the current state. The other problem is that the tool set of the current library is a bit unwieldy. I'm still to get the proper futures library in place, which basically means that we have to deal with the complex Qt's syntax to connect signals to slots. It very quickly becomes very cluttered, very big, and it doesn't look good. And for newbies, it's just plain frightening.
But doesn't Qt kind of help you with this? Is Qt? I mean, part of the value of it is that this stuff comes in the box.
Qt's signal slots system is absolutely amazing. It's something that is really helping to keep the library very much uncoupled from the clients, at the same time providing a very rich functionality. I can literally throw around pieces of code or organize them together using signal slots, using those connections, almost in a coroutine fashion, which is really advanced thing. But still, when it comes to chaining those calls, rather than just trying to make some kind of a reactive request response things, but chaining things is not very easy. You basically have to nest those connect calls or somehow try to unroll them, but then it becomes very long. And that's the part that doesn't look very good. And that's where I really need the proper futures library. I do have a few things for that, and probably we will get something very soon.
Actually, you get a great view of our bookshelf, all the ancient C++ books that we have here.
Wow. Yeah, I know about Matthew's past.
Yeah. Sorry? You know about?
I know about Matthew's past. So yeah. So again, the futures library inside libQMatrixClient is sure is going to happen very, very soon, like in the nearest month or two, maybe.
Okay.
Because that's something that we literally cannot move on without, because if to get it on board, I will drown myself and I won't get anybody else on board. So, and besides, I do consider that libQMatrixClient can be used in a very wide range of use cases, from IoT, from really small cases where Qt actually feels at home, all the way to maybe even integrated development environments for Matrix, who knows? So one of possible ideas would be to make a designer environment where basically a developer could make new types of events, try to test them, generate definitions in YAML, all that from a single workplace. That would be perfectly amazing. And Qt does have everything necessary for that.
Interesting. So does that relate to your work on, you had a project called GTAD? It sounds like it's a very related idea.
Somewhat, but GTAD is actually, it goes the other way around. That project was conceived when I understood that CS API is huge, and I already write a lot of boilerplate code just to get access to all those calls. Because I can even stick the REST library into my tool set, But that won't ease my things, because the static definitions for all of those constructs, for all of those structures, are still not there. I still have to parse them somehow. And of course, it would be much better if the machine parsed them for me, which I basically done with GTAD. Now, the next frontier, and that would be the project that does the thing opposite to GTAD, would be to make a certain kind of visual designer or a simplified JSON editor or YAML editor that would allow you to figure out what kind of event you want to make, add all the necessary things around it in order to make it a valid matrix event, generate for it, and instead of writing YAML by hand, you get the definition, the test suite, and probably the C++ code next to it that deals with all those events, all from the same place, basically by a single click of a button. Well, this is a dream. Eventually, that's something that I will get to maybe in a year or two.
Okay.
But that's what hugely drives me. One of the possible niches for Quaternion, if Spectral starts really decent, is to go to the higher end and shift it towards more of a design environment, matrix development environment.
Interesting. Okay, so would you use that to completely rebuild Quaternion? You know, once you had that design environment, you could essentially generate something like Quaternion from there.
There was that idea. I quickly dismissed it because I quickly understood that you can do whatever you want on the marshalling code. Like, you can turn definitions, your API definitions, to your C++ code, to your usual C++ structs and functions and methods and everything. But you cannot produce business logic out of it. No way. The business logic still is something that has to be invented by a human. So the only thing that the machine can do is facilitate building that business logic out of the blocks, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, but I mean, certain things like, you know, the idea of a room list, a user list, membership controls. It's surely it's something that it's business logic, but you could create boilerplates for that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So you can make a boilerplate and you can try to rearrange it somehow, but then at some point in time, you need to do something Apple-like. Controls when there are no things that are just do whatever you would like to do with it, because this is, in the end, this is not user-friendly. And that was one of the big takeouts from the Quaternion development. One of the reasons why Quaternion, for example, loses adoption to Nheko is that Nheko is literally more usable for an average user. It doesn't look like an ordinary IRC client, very busy, very somehow looking cluttered to many people. It's clear. It's much more. It gives more space. It doesn't press on you. I understood that point at some point, at some moment, and I decided that probably I don't want to go that way.
No, okay, but I mean, you get the best of both worlds by having, you know, Quaternion does the UI that you want it to do. At the same time, libQMatrix is used for Spectral and other clients where they have their own style, and, you know, it's more suitable for beginners.
Precisely, and that's why I'm absolutely fond of using QMatrixClient. Quaternion is just a reference client for libraries features, so that people like Black Hat or other developers could look at this, maybe borrow Quaternion code in some places, and do their own stuff, much clearer, much more usable.
So you even suggested, you know, not continuing to work on Quaternion or not continuing to push it as a user-facing client. Is that something you've still got in mind?
Well, maybe at some point in time, Quaternion will stop being an all-purpose matrix client. Eventually, it might end up with being actually the reference client, which only developers, only engineers are supposed to look at, and end users maybe will just run away, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just fine again.
Okay, so let's change topic a little bit. You're on the Matrix spec core team. You're sort of a guider for this project.
Right.
How's your experience been with that?
On one hand, I'm very honored. I'm very humbled to be on board. Of course, that gives a certain impression that is no more single-handedly driven by New Vector, which at the same time is somehow revelating because we're opening to the community, and at the same time obliging because we now have to respect the community. And feel quite a load from that because being the only community member in the spec core team at the moment, I feel like I have to somehow represent the ideas, at least of the client developers, across the board, across the entire community. And it's not an easy task, especially given that the library, for example, is very much foreign to end-to-end encryption questions still. That's something that we are really hoping to address this year, but that was something that we really hoped to address last year as well. So probably it's like a year of Linux desktop. Eventually it will happen.
No, I don't know. This year seemed to be a lot more promising for end-to-end development.
Well, in fact, I've seen a guy who came around recently wanting to do development for libQMatrixClient.
Yeah. Was this part of GSOC?
To make it end-to-end encryption. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if we make it for GSOC, it will be totally awesome. Because I somehow will feel that somebody else is also committed to doing a good chunk of functionality for that. It needs dedicated time thinking to implement end-to-end encryption in the right way, and I literally don't have that time any day soon.
No, but I mean, if you could give them guidance on how to help the project.
I will be around. I absolutely will be around. That's a weak point of the QMatrixClient project at the moment. We are gradually addressing it, but one of the things, the complexity of the library back was a very, very tiny community around it, and that basically means that it's just me regularly working on the library, and I'm doing it in my spare time, literally just for fun. So it's not sustainable.
No. Okay. We have Matrix 1.0 on the very near horizon. A big part of this will be finalizing some spec items that you're involved with. What are you most excited about to see after that?
Well, let me see. Decentralized identities, absolutely. That's something. See, Quaternion has been one of very few clients that supports several identities from the single interface. I literally use it on an everyday basis, and I'm deeply convinced that people will use it all the way with the same background, with the same reasoning why using several mail addresses. Because it's just easier to put things in different files instead of trying to collect them under a single account and then trying to somehow figure out in another way. The easiest thing the easiest example is work account and private account, and decentralized identities. They bring another degree of freedom. Because instead of keeping that particular selected account or that particular selected pair of accounts bound to a specific server or a specific pair of servers, you can just dissolve them in the network and be able to connect to whichever server in the network you feel suitable at the moment, or you feel reliable at the moment.
Yeah.
So this is something that I really look forward to see. I fully understand the complexity of that, with validating those decentralized identities with reputation tracking, which we will have to solve along the way, because decentralized identities are much more susceptible to abuse in this regard.
What can you expand on that? Why is it more susceptible to abuse?
Well, because if you have a decentralized identity, it's much harder to track you down to a particular server owner and shut you down.
I see.
You can connect to another place and continue doing nasty things. Eventually, of course, you might be tracked down. Your decentralized identity might be invalidated even. But this somehow has to be done via the consensus across the servers. It should be done via federation rather than addressing a particular admin of a particular server and saying shut him down. He's a spammer.
Yeah, I mean, right now anything like that is done at the human level, at OSI 8 level.
Exactly, and this is not scalable. So that's something that we will have to solve. I understand how decentralized identities can live without reputation, of course. So probably these two things are something I look forward to in the nearest couple of years.
All right, brilliant. Okay, so I mean, this year is going to be quite an exciting one. If you can get this end-to-end stuff available in libQMatrix, then that would be really exciting, especially if you can get a GSOC student involved with that, and decentralized identity as well.
Yeah, it would be completely awesome.
Yeah. So there was one more thing. Didn't you have a plan for some rebranding or a new name or something?
Yeah, there's a small a bit of surprise coming around with the next stable version of libQMatrixClient. The library in a different way. A particular name is yet a secret. The reason being is that it's not entirely finalized on one hand, and things that I say that are tentative and they are coming up soon are usually not coming up soon. So I just don't want to spoil the party.
Okay.
So that's something. So watch the space, join the QMatrixClient room, and you will very soon find out the new name of the project.
Okay, we'll put a link in the description for all of these things. Okay, Kitsune, thank you very much. If you've got any final thoughts, then share them. Otherwise, thanks for joining me.
Well, to sum up, I'd really appreciate if more commercial folks look closer at Matrix as their means of daily communication. This is something very convenient using email, and I'm afraid too many people still underappreciate that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to personally work to that end as well. And let me just hope that in the nearest year or two, we will see a ground breakthrough, not only in adoption of personal or small-sized servers, but the commercial servers at bigger organizations happily not only connecting people within the organization, but most importantly, connecting people across organizations. Once we get there, we will be invincible.
Yeah, I mean, it would be incredible. If everybody was using their own Matrix server the way they use their own Slack server, and then we federated between those, then that would be the dream. All right, well, let's work on that together.
So let's work on that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Kitsune, thank you very much. Thank you, Matrix Live. See you again next week.
Bye.